What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to dive into how to select the correct or the right Texas rig weight for the application you're fishing. Let's dive into it right now.
Oh my gosh.
This is something that, at first glance, it's definitely trying to shoot some content on the channel that ultimately can help a lot of the people out there that are becoming, they're trying to catch their first bass, or they're just trying to get into tournament fishing. There's a lot of young kids out there. And I was that kid, about 15 years ago. I was always eating up every little bit of content I could. So this is sort of one of those for whether you're a seasoned veteran or if you're someone that just is trying to get into bass fishing. Appreciate you guys following along. So let's dive into the weight selection right now. Now, right here, I have multiple different weights, and this is sort of like a range of weights that I have in my box most days. Now, I could add a 16th. This is actually an eighth, so I could add a 16th if I have to, but it's probably the level. Really, I don't throw a 16th that much. I mean, if you're really trying to fish certain things, you can. So let's do an overview of some of the weights. This is an eighth. This is a second one's a 3/16, a quarter, 5/16. This is basically like a 3/8. It's like a half. This is like a 3/4. And then I normally will have a 1 ounce and then an ounce and a half. So that's about the range. I'm missing my 1 ounce. It's the only one that I'm missing right here. But you guys sort of see the gist of it. And, the one thing that I always try to pay attention to when I'm selecting my weight is what kind of cover am I fishing? So cover is everything, So, and then real quick sort of definition of cover and structure. So when I'm talking about structure, that's normally offshore, humps, points, places that are, creek channel bends, stuff like that. Cover is actually the cover that I'm fishing. So a brush pile would actually technically be cover. Even though it's deep, it might be structure, sort of kind of, but it's actually more so the actual changes in the bottom. So I'm giving you guys this going, but anyway, cover. So whether that's weeds, whether that's rock, whether that's wood, whether it's docks, whatever it might be, whatever that is, that's what I'm trying to decide ultimately. What am I going to pick? Now, probably the number one thing that I use a Texas rig for is flipping and pitching. Flipping and pitching is you hear guys talk about flipping, and really the actual correct way, flipping is taking the line out and just sort of popping it in there. But that's really, we're talking about pitching your bait around, making a little roll cast, short little pitches or short little, little flips. That's sort of what I call flipping, the flipping and pitching. So what is the number one weight for my flipping and pitching for the most part, day in and day out, whether I'm flipping like wood, rock, docks, whatever it might be, my number one weight for flipping and pitching is a 5/16 ounce weight. That is in between a quarter and a 3/8. And the reason why that is it's sort of the best of both worlds. I feel like the rate of fall that you get with a 5/16 ounce weight on most soft plastics, particularly a Bandito bug for me, is about perfect when I'm talking 5 feet or less. When I'm flipping and pitching 5 feet or less, that gives me enough weight to get my bait down there, gives me enough weight to make that accurate little pitch out there, but it also allows that bait to act right and act natural. I just had the most success. Me and DC go back all the time talking about this. So picking and selecting your weight is, so like on a sort of a rule of thumb, I try to get away with the lightest weight possible. Now, normally during this spawn, when the water's 55 to 65 degrees is around the spawn time, this fish are starting to push up, I really try to go with lighter weights because I just feel like they're a lot more sensitive to that. A longer time for that bait to fall for me has always worked better for getting more bites. So like I'll go with an 1/8 ounce weight when I'm pitching around on, when the fish are up there spawning and I can't visually see them, but I'm pitching around like maybe with like a stick worm, like sort of like a Cinco type bait or like a lunker log with Guggen baits. That's when I'll select that lighter weights casting out there or even weightless. Now, when I'm pitching and flipping, I would say like the universal probably number one like selected weight out there for like flipping and pitching is probably going to be a 3/8 ounce. 3/8 is probably the one that most people use. It gives you a lot of weight, enough weight to where you get that bait out there. It just seems to work well. But like I said, 5/16 is what I personally choose. Now, when I'm selecting, like say I'm casting like a swim bait or like a swimming worm, Now I'm going to select a little bit lighter. This is giving me that application to cast further, but I don't, like, so say if I'm fishing a grass flat, I'm going to select probably like a quarter, or less. Quarter is going to be heavy, so if I'm fishing deeper, 10 feet, then I'm going to go ahead and, probably 3/16, eighth. Another time that I will slow and actually go down in my weight a substantial amount is when I'm in the backs of creeks, when there's a lot of silted bottom. When you're flipping a flat with a lot of wood on it, one thing that I'm always paying attention to is that bait. If I have a heavy weight and there's not a lot of water there, that bait's going down and it's going diving into the mud. Along with, you got to think of is grass. When you're dragging around in grass, you're going to probably want to go on those lighter weights, because ultimately the heavier the weight, especially if you peg those weights and actually peg that sinker there to that bait, it will actually dive into that grass. And probably a lot of times when you're trying to stay on top of the grass and just sort of like pop it through it, it'll actually go into that grass, and your bite ratio, or you won't get as many bites. So that's sort of what I look at. When I'm, the deeper I go, or the deeper water I'm fishing, I tend to go a little bit heavier all around offshore weight. When I'm throwing a big worm, when I'm fishing 10 feet or heavier, or 10 feet or more, 10 plus feet of water, that is when I'm going to go up in my weights. I'm going to go to my 3/8, my half, even up to a 3/4 on a big worm. That is sort of the gist of when I'm selecting my weights. Texas rigging is one technique in bass fishing, or one particular rig that you definitely want to add to your arsenal if you haven't already. But selecting your weights can be a little bit difficult. But it's really not that hard. You just have to think about it. Think like a bass. That's always what I try to do. So hopefully this video helps you out. I try to talk about some of that stuff, and then also the last but not least, before I end this, selecting heavier weights. The one thing is, I'll slide over here real quick. I always have my 3/4, my 1 ounce, my 1.5 ounces. This is more for my applications of flipping and punching in heavy cover. If I'm flipping grass out really deep, or if I'm flipping, grass or punching matted vegetation, that's when I'm going to go to that 1.5 ounces or a 2 ounce or 1.25 ounces. There's so many different variations, but that's when you're going to use those big weights. That's what you hear, like some of the terms. If you hear that term, big weight, that's a lot of what it is punching heavy vegetation. So that's what it is. I mean, you can make it simple, you can make it fun, but those are a few tips that ultimately help me to decide what weight that I'm going to be Texas rigging with. Hopefully this tip helps you out. Thank you guys so much for following along. If you learned a little bit something in this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. We really appreciate it. See y'all next time.